talked about that this weekend is when I had a conversation with a young lady, and she kept saying Yeshua, and I was like, Yeshua? And she was like, I was like, no, Jesus' name was Yeshua. And Doc raised a good point on our show. And one of the things, let me just paint this picture because it was so profound when she said it that I didn't even think about it. When she was talking about how we all went to go see The Passion of the Christ, which to me was an outstanding movie. But I remember, and she brought up the point how everybody, black, white, every nationality was in the movie theater bawling. When Jesus got whipped and his flesh was being ripped from him and just impaled everything. Okay, just hysterically crying. Some people had to leave the theater. But then for 8 weeks, Kunta Kinte was getting beaten and the same thing. And there was no sympathy.
There's no connection.
There was no connection.
Identify with it.
One of the things that Doc said is that when we saw Caucasian flesh being destroyed, it was like, oh my God.
It was a crime.
It was a crime.
Right.
But when African American flesh was destroyed,
it was justified.
It was justified because he was property. He should have paid attention. He should have stopped and been Toby and stayed put.
Been obedient.
That was like, obedient. And that was like crazy to me. But she raised a valid point. Okay. And one of the things that when I was talking to the man, again, let's just call it what it is, this whole tokenism and the accepting things and pulling, again, let's talk about when we talk about Sankofa, right? One of the things that gets under my skin, and Doc teaches about this all the time, is when people are in church and they raise their hand and they bow to go. And for some godforsaken reason, our culture has been taught that that's the way you excuse yourself
good
in
mannerisms
church.
In church etiquette.
Good mannerisms. But that's not it. What that one finger was the slave saying, Master, do I have your permission to get up to go to the bathroom, or do I have your permission to move? And he had to wait until the master acknowledged them with a nod, and then they humbly bowed their way out, not to cause a disturbance.
And upon re-entry, they kept that same finger up as if to say, don't let the dog, we say, who let the dogs out? Right. They kept that finger up as if to say, you don't need to send a posse for me. I've been good.
I've been good.
You don't need to send a posse for me. I was obedient.
But generationally, we see people pour this into their kids because not researching, not wanting to be told the truth. I found that now, since I'm on this, like some people say, Angela Davis movement, call it whatever you want. But I find that I have more resistance talking to people of color and African Americans and going, this is not stuff that Silk is making up. This is facts.
You have to be, when you are engaged in this type of dialogue, when you are dealing with these very critical lenses by which we must view the reality of our condition, of the narrative that is real to us, our plight, you have to be real. You have to say, what am I doing to either perpetuate this myth, or what am I doing to dismantle this myth? For example, I am still offended at the fact, now I love animals. Michael Brown laid on the ground for 4 hours.
For 4 hours.
In front of community for 4 hours. And no one was even allowed to come help him. 4 hours. And that was considered kind of okay. Cecil, the lion, gets shot, and it is a national, a global thing. We're going nuts over a lion, but we cared less about Mike Brown. When we see the police, and I think they need to do some kind of a different kind of training, but when we see police with impunity kill young black men, kill women, young sisters too. It's not just black men, sisters too. And then have the arrogance as if to say that's okay, and then be supported. There's a problem with that. When we look at militarization in our community, they're showing up with tanks, they're showing up with automatic weapons, and we don't have any of that. I think about New Jack City when Nino Brown was in court. He said, hey, We don't have all this. We can't afford all this. You guys are bringing this to us. And then I looked at the Europeans, these white folk that were allowed to come militia style into the community with machine guns, stand around to say, hey, we're just here to keep the peace. Let a bunch of brothers show up with some AK-47s. Let a bunch of brothers show up with grenades and stuff and tear gas talking about we here to help. Oh no. They're not going to have it.
Because even that situation in Baltimore was like absolutely crazy. It turned into a war zone. To me, it aggravated a situation. And that was one of the things that one of the gentlemen who he online does. And he was like, well, what is it about when you all, I don't know who you all, but when you all get mad, y'all tear up your neighborhoods. And what I tried to explain to him, I don't condone that. But you have to understand the frustration. You have to live in a neighborhood that you are taking my money, but I can't even get any respect in. Where you follow me from the front door to the back door just when I'm coming in to get a can of soda or something. You're jacking up the prices because you know in this perimeter, I can't go any further. You have no respect for me. I'm talking to you as like an animal through bulletproof glass or a little window that folds up, and you take my money and stuff. So this is all vented up frustration that until the powder keg explodes, then you see that. Because it's no different than when your sports team doesn't win and y'all tear up the whole city and buses and flip over cars and whoo, we won.
You just gave me a revelation, and I don't know, I'm going to just say it anyway. They tear up their own stuff. Because guess what? In the urban Serengeti in the hood, we don't own those stores. No. They're not our stores, so we're not tearing up our stuff. We're expressing ourselves. And unfortunately, sometimes it gets a little rough, but then again, that's just a byproduct of pain and trauma and a lot of pent-up aggression. But when you dehumanize people, when you devaluate the lives of people, when you have caused people to live in that pain and in that sense of anxiety, not knowing when they're going to get pulled over, not knowing when they're going to get stopped, it is an atrocity right now that if a sister has a young black man or a daughter even, these days when the phone rings, her first thought is not that it's a friendly call. It's what happened to my child. Her first thought is it going to be the police station? Is it going to be the morgue? Who is calling me? Her first thing is that maybe something happened. And that's sad to me. But then again, we live in that reality. It is real to us. It is not a myth. It happens. And we've seen it happen. Not only has it happened in a couple of isolated, it's become a pandemic. And in fact, here's the thing that gets me. You have the guy, and I don't, whatever his name was, Batman movie, just shoots up the whole theater. He's standing trial right now and killed all kind of people. You have this young white man that in the church killed people. The audacity to do that on holy ground. He is standing trial right now. They are not perceived threats. They are actual threats. They have killed people, yet they are walking around with bulletproof vests on. We have done nothing. We got our hands up saying don't shoot, and we are dying daily, definitely, and by the dozens. There's an oxymoron involved in that sense of perception and that type of justice. And that's why we say justice and then just us, because the rules don't seem to apply when it comes to us. Agreed. And so now we shout Black Lives Matter because we need you to hear that. Yes, all lives matter, but ours do too. We need to be a part of that all, because somehow, even in the Constitution at one point, and probably still, we were listed as 3/5 of a man. If indeed we are 3/5 of a man, no black man should be in jail, because we can simply say that part of our mind was not there. So how can I stand trial? We should all be able to get an alibi with that. We should all get a get out of jail free card. Now we're whole when we're in court. We're whole when you pull us over. We're whole when you decide to shoot at us. But then again, when you need us to be an animal, a mule, you're justified.
Good point.
It's an economic thing.
And with that point, we're going to put an exclamation point. Stop right there. We'll be right back. Once again, you're watching Sister to Sister. Can we talk with my brother, my pastor's friend?
Amen.
Chi-Town from the urban Serengeti, the Pastor Darnell Caruthers, and we'll be right back.
That this decision was the grand jury's to make. There are Americans who agree with it, and there are Americans who are deeply disappointed, even angry. It's an understandable reaction. But I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully. Let me repeat Michael's father's words. Hurting others or destroying property is not the answer. No matter what the grand jury decides, I do not want my son's death to be in vain. I want it to lead to incredible change, positive change, change that makes the St. Louis region better for everyone. Now, Michael Brown's parents have lost more than anyone. We should be honoring their wishes. I also appeal to the law enforcement officials in Ferguson and the region to show care and restraint in managing peaceful protests that may occur. Understand, our police officers put their lives on the line for us every single day. They've got a tough job to do to maintain public safety and hold accountable those who break the law.
And you are watching Sister to Sister Can We Talk. This is your girl Silk. We are without Doc this week. We wish her traveling mercies, and she'll be back next week. I am sitting here with my brother, pastor, friend, the Reverend Darnell Caruthers from the urban Serengeti. We just call him Chi-Town because he's family like that. If you have a question or a comment, or if you heard something, you agree, disagree, we want to hear from you. Give us a call, 915-5202. Now, understand, we are not offended if you call, because that means that you're paying attention, and we like that too. But please give us a call and tell us what you think. We'd like to hear from you. One of the things I ended with that explanation point there, because one of the things that we also talked about, and we talked about off camera, is, okay, now we got the foundation. We have to take responsibility too. We have to take some form of accountability. We have to stop shucking and jiving and sweeping this thing under the table and trying to act like it don't exist. We have to stop worrying about making other people mad. The reality is what the reality is. One of the things that I said to the gentleman who was on the show, on the radio show, is, well, he was like, well, you keep talking about the problem. What about a solution? And I challenged any math major to call into the show and tell me how you could get a solution if you don't want to recognize that there's a problem. It's fundamentally impossible. You've got to have some kind of situations to put together. You know, remember John traveled 400 miles to get to such and such. It's got to be some kind of foundation of a problem in order to get to the solution. And one of the things that we always hear that just drive me absolutely nuts, well, why y'all not talking about black on black crime? And I just think that that is like the stupidest thing to say. Okay, we recognize, but there is no such thing as black on black crime. And let me explain to you why I say that. Name me somebody who's going to get on the bus to go across town to rob somebody.
Exactly. And in fact, what's so...
Or take a cab. I'm going to just hail a cab because you know what? I want to do a breaking and entry. So I'm going to hail a cab and go all the way across town. My point is, black on black crime is just people that are isolated and confined into an area that crime is existing because it's in demographically what they can get to.
Exactly. And that point was underscored by Chris Hayes on MSNBC. They just did a report on the same thing in terms of language and terminology, and because the same crime exists and the same ratio exists in other communities and in other cultures.
Exactly.
You know, crime is crime where you live, you know, and that's what it is. And so, but however, again, when you deal with branding and deal with, if you want African Americans to look like this wild savage that you justify by shooting and killing, or you justify by denying them privileges because you say they don't deserve to have this or that, or they don't deserve to have access. I mean, who was it? Was it Lindsey Graham? It was a senator. One of them got upset because a mother was in the grocery store buying crab legs, and now they're saying you can't buy
crab legs with food stamps.
Is that about?
Right. It's food stamps. You're supposed to eat whatever you want, but it's all of these specific.
But we do have to take ownership, because we are very aware. The book of Amos teaches us about waiting for a nation that cannot help us. You know, right? We can help ourselves because, again, we have television producers, we have school teachers, we have scientists, we have engineers, and so we have within our own community all kinds of icons of success, all kinds of persons that inspire and motivate. However, we need to avail ourselves to the community and get away from the us and them, because we also have to deal with the trauma involved in classism. One thing about reparations that I think is somewhat misleading is that we have tended to associate reparations with revenue. We looking for 40 acres in a mule. That is not reparations in and of itself.